Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's moment didn't just shake the timeline. It exploded across every corner of social media. Lil Tim pressed go live, and within seconds, thousands of viewers rushed in, expecting the usual back and forth. But instead, something completely unexpected happened. Something that shifted the entire mood of the stream. Because out of nowhere, a single mention, a single name, turned the chat into absolute chaos. King Von's mom. The energy switched instantly. Comments flew faster than the live stream could keep up. OTF supporters jumped in. Fans were confused. Critics were reacting in real time. And the internet was trying to figure out why this name came up and what the real context was. People weren't just watching a live stream anymore. They were watching pressure build. They were watching emotions rise. They were watching a moment that nobody saw coming. But here's the real question. What exactly triggered the shift? Why did the chat explode the way it did? And how did OTF go from quiet to snapping back online within minutes? Tonight, Spillora breaks down the reactions, the confusion, and the chain reaction that this one live stream set off across the entire hip-hop community. Stay tuned. This gets deeper. The moment Lil Tim's live stream began, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The usual viewers pulled in. The chat started filling with quick comments, some supporters, some critics, and a few neutral watchers who were just there out of curiosity. But slowly, something about the atmosphere felt different. There was a tension you could sense even through the screen, the kind that hinted the night wouldn't stay calm for long. Lil Tim looked more serious than usual, less distracted, more focused, almost like he had come on live with something specific in mind, but hadn't yet decided whether to say it. His tone wasn't sharp, but it wasn't relaxed either. It felt like he was walking on a line between addressing something and holding back. For the first few minutes, the stream moved normally. People cracked jokes in the comments. Others tried to get his attention, and some pushed old narratives, trying to bait him into arguments. He ignored most of it, responding only to neutral things, avoiding anything that looked like drama bait. But then a question appeared in the chat, one that almost everyone noticed instantly. A viewer mentioned King Von's name. The comment didn't sound hostile. It sounded more like curiosity. But it struck a nerve in the audience immediately. People started reacting fast, and the chat sped up at a rate that changed the energy of the entire live stream. Lil Tim saw it. He paused for half a second, not enough to be dramatic, but enough to show he was choosing his words carefully. Instead of engaging with the question, he moved around it. But viewers picked up on that hesitation, and that's when more comments referencing King Von started flooding in. Some viewers asked for clarification on old stories. Others said they were tired of the internet resurfacing the same topics, and a few demanded he ignore it completely. The tension became noticeable. Then it happened. A viewer mentioned King Von's mom. The chat froze for a second, as if everyone was waiting to see if Lil Tim had even noticed the message. But the moment he read it, something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not frustration, something more like a mix of reflection and discomfort. The chat exploded. People started typing fast, asking why her name was even being brought up, what context the viewers were even trying to create, and whether Lil Tim was going to respond. He didn't lash out. He didn't get loud. He didn't escalate. Instead, he let out a quiet breath, like he knew that name coming up would bring the conversation into a space he never wanted to revisit publicly. His silence sent the viewers spiraling. Some said he looked like he wanted to address something deeper. Others insisted it was better for him to ignore it altogether. And some started pulling in myths, old clips, past interviews, and online narratives, turning the stream into a battlefield of different interpretations. As the chat grew more chaotic, OTF supporters started coming in. It wasn't confrontational at first. It was more like they were reacting to the energy of the moment. Some felt the viewers were stirring unnecessary tension. Others felt protective of Von's legacy. Some were simply confused, asking what led to the mention in the first place. The live stream became a space where every group had something to say, and Lil Tim found himself in the center of an online storm he never intentionally created. He finally spoke after a long pause, clarifying that he didn't bring the name up and didn't understand why the chat suddenly pushed the conversation in that direction. He looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to make sure his words didn't get twisted into something bigger. But once that name surfaced, the internet wasn't going to let it go easily. People clipped that moment instantly, uploading it across different platforms with different captions, each pushing their own interpretation. While Lil Tim tried to keep the conversation neutral, viewers kept demanding explanations, asking why he reacted the way he did, and insisting there had to be more to the story. He repeated he wasn't going to add unnecessary fuel to anything. But his refusal to engage made the internet even more curious. They began connecting dots that weren't even there, creating theories, trying to read his expressions frame by frame, and debating in comment sections nonstop. OTF supporters watching the stream started posting reactions live. Some accused viewers of trying to stir drama for clicks, while others felt that any mention of Von's family should be avoided entirely unless handled respectfully. Clips went viral within minutes, spreading faster than Lil Tim could move the live stream forward. Old footage, old stories, and old discussions resurfaced instantly, dragging the chat into 10 different directions at once. Through all of this, Lil Tim tried to continue the stream normally, but the chat wasn't letting go. Every time he shifted the topic, someone brought the name back up. Every time he answered something else, the viewers redirected it to the same conversation. The weight of the situation made the stream feel heavier by the minute, and the fact that OTF supporters were now reacting publicly added another layer of intensity. What made the moment even more unpredictable was the way the comment sections outside the live stream started evolving. People who weren't even watching the live began reacting to the clips that were circulating online. Different narratives formed within minutes, each one louder than the last. But the truth was simple. No explanation was given, no claims were made, and nothing direct happened. Yet the internet turned the moment into something massive because viewers interpreted silence as meaning something deeper. And that silent moment became the spark that set the entire online conversation on fire. The internet wasn't waiting for facts, context, or statements. They were reacting to energy, tension, history, and emotion. The live stream kept going, but the moment had already left its mark. From that point on, nothing about the night would stay calm. The chain reaction had started, and the next phase began without warning. The chain reaction didn't slow down. If anything, it accelerated once the clips landed on platforms outside the live stream. The moment his facial expression shifted, people started interpreting it in 100 different ways. The online debate moved from what was said to why it was said, and then to the deeper question, what did the name trigger emotionally? That mystery created a magnet for speculation, and the more Lil Tim tried to move forward with the stream, the stronger the audience pulled him back into the same topic. By this point, several OTF-affiliated pages, fan accounts, and supporters were already posting their own takes. Some said the moment felt off. Others argued it wasn't deep at all and that viewers were blowing the situation out of proportion. But the most repeated comment was that King Von's mom, being such a sensitive figure in the narrative, shouldn't have been brought up casually in a live chat, especially in a setting already filled with tension. Inside the live stream, the energy became unpredictable. People who were originally watching for entertainment now started dissecting every sentence, every silence, every shift in tone. It was no longer a casual live stream. It had turned into a moment where hundreds of people tried to read between lines that weren't even there. Every new comment pushed the atmosphere further into speculation territory. Lil Tim, sensing the weight of the moment, repeatedly told viewers he wasn't trying to revisit anything, wasn't hinting at anything, and wasn't going to disrespect anyone. He looked determined not to create conflict, but also exhausted by the nonstop pressure from the chat. But viewers weren't calming down. They demanded clarity. They wanted closure on years of internet narratives that he was never going to solve in a live stream. Outside the live stream, meanwhile, reaction pages started uploading their own edited versions of the clip, adding captions that intensified the situation. Some captions framed the moment as emotional, others as suspicious, and some as confrontational, even though the actual live stream showed none of that. But captions are powerful. They change context. They shape public perception. And within an hour, the story had evolved into something entirely different from what happened on the live stream. That was the moment when OTF supporters escalated their presence online. They began pushing back against narratives that felt exaggerated. They argued that dragging family members into ongoing internet discussions was unnecessary and disrespectful, regardless of the intent behind the original comment in the chat. Some felt that people were using Vaughn's mom's name as a way to trigger reactions rather than discuss anything productive. The more the reactions grew, the more fragmented the conversation became. Different groups pushed different interpretations. Some viewers said Lil Tim looked like he was trying to suppress emotions. Others insisted he was simply avoiding unnecessary drama. Some claimed he was holding back a statement. Others said he just wanted to move on. But the one thing almost everyone agreed on, the moment carried weight. As this debate gained traction, the live stream began to feel like a place where the past was trying to resurface, not because of what was said, but because of how people interpreted every detail. Lil Tim eventually shifted the conversation to completely different topics, but the chat didn't follow him. They had already locked into the earlier moment, unwilling to let go of the shockwave it produced. Meanwhile, reaction channels began going live themselves, discussing the moment in real time. They pulled up the clip, slowed it down, broke it apart, and examined every second. They debated whether his pause meant shock, discomfort, guilt, sadness, frustration, or simply irritation at the chat dragging him into an emotional space he never volunteered to enter. And as these conversations continued, OTF supporters became more vocal. They insisted the moment showed why certain topics should remain private and why the internet shouldn't force emotional triggers into public spaces for entertainment. Others insisted Lil Tim's silence meant he had unspoken thoughts. Reaction hosts debated these interpretations non-stop. By this time, the original live stream was still running. Lil Tim tried to steer the stream back into normal territory. He played music, answered unrelated questions, joked lightly with a few viewers, and attempted to shift the vibe. But the chat refused to reset. The earlier moment had overshadowed everything else. And this was the point when OTF's online presence became more aggressive. Some made posts expressing dissatisfaction with how the live stream audience handled the moment. They argued that viewers were destabilizing the situation intentionally to create conflict. Others said the reaction felt disrespectful, regardless of how calm Lil Tim remained. OTF supporters felt protective of Vaughn's legacy, and any mention of his family triggered emotional responses from people who had followed the story for years. Clips flooded the internet for the next 2 hours. Some tried to interpret the situation calmly, while others pushed dramatic narratives. Older interviews resurfaced, older tweets were reposted, and older discussions were revived. People who weren't even present in the original live stream began adding opinions, expanding the circle of conversation even further. The effect spread across platforms rapidly. TikTok users began stitching the clip, discussing trauma, online narratives, and unresolved tensions in the public eye. Reddit threads formed instantly, with people debating whether the reaction was genuine, avoidant, emotional, or strategic. Twitter discussions became even more chaotic as different communities pushed their own interpretations, from emotionally heavy takes to insensitive jokes. All of this unfolded while Lil Tim remained live, trying to continue his day. He didn't respond to any of the external noise. He didn't acknowledge the edits, the captions, or the reactions. But the longer the live stream continued, the bigger the narrative outside it became. What started as a quiet mention in a chat had turned into a multi-platform discussion involving thousands of voices, each with their own perspective. And as the live stream eventually reached its quieter phase, the conversation outside was still building momentum. OTF supporters were still posting. Reaction channels were still debating. The narrative was still expanding. And the internet wasn't showing signs of slowing down. The evening wasn't over. Not for the viewers, not for the reaction pages, and certainly not for the communities emotionally tied to the history behind the names mentioned. The situation was on the verge of shifting into its final stage. The moment where the internet reaction channels and fan communities would converge into one shared conclusion. And that's when the final phase began taking shape. As the final stage of the discussion began forming across the internet, people started stepping back and analyzing the broader picture. The nonstop reactions, the emotional debates, the misinterpretations, the clipped edits. Everything created a massive wave of conversation that didn't match the simplicity of what originally happened on a live stream. But that's how the internet works. Moments evolve, narratives shift, and silence invites theories faster than any spoken word. The turning point came when several larger commentary platforms addressed the situation with longer, more structured breakdowns. These weren't quick reactions or emotionally charged responses. They were calm analyses of how the internet took a single moment and inflated it into a trending topic. They pointed out that Lil Tim never initiated the discussion, never made a statement, and never invoked anyone's name. Viewers did. The clip that started circulating wasn't about content. It was about interpretation. These commentary posts slowed down the chaos slightly, but not enough to stop it. They simply added a new layer to the conversation. Some people said it proved everyone overreacted. Others said it validated the emotional weight people sensed in the clip. A new debate started forming. Whether the internet projected meaning onto something that wasn't meant to mean anything. Meanwhile, OTF supporters continued their pushback, emphasizing that emotional sensitivity around certain topics shouldn't be underestimated. Many felt the viewers were insensitive for forcing the moment into the live. Others said they understood why the reaction was strong because the history behind the two names carries deep emotional complexity that stretches beyond the livestream itself. But a different side of the internet had also begun forming. The side that questioned why people constantly dug up old narratives instead of moving forward. They argued that viewers should let moments be moments without attaching unnecessary context. They insisted that reaction culture often spirals into noise because people want to see something deeper even when nothing is there. While these broader discussions were happening, Lil Tim stayed silent outside the live stream. He didn't address the aftermath. He didn't post follow-ups. He didn't release statements. His silence outside the live made the internet run entirely on speculation and interpretation. This is what triggered the final wave of conversation. People began revisiting the live stream clip with a calmer mind. When viewed without captions, edits, or commentary overlays, the moment looked different. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't shocking. It wasn't dramatic. It was brief discomfort in response to a sensitive name being mentioned unexpectedly. A simple human reaction turned into a trending moment because the internet magnifies everything. This newfound perspective pushed some viewers to reflect on how fast narratives form online. Others defended their original interpretations by saying that emotional history plays a role in how people perceive silence. But regardless of which side they took, the conversation had begun to settle. The chaos from earlier started to fade as more viewers realized the moment wasn't what many made it out to be. But the situation wasn't over yet. A final ripple came when fans from both sides started discussing how online communities handle emotional triggers poorly. Some argued that certain topics should be avoided unless willingly addressed by the person involved. Others argued that if you go live publicly, you can't control what viewers say, making moments like this inevitable. The conversation shifted from the specifics of a live stream to a broader reflection on internet culture, trauma narratives, and the responsibility of chat audiences. This final phase became less about Lil Tim and more about how people handle sensitive topics in real time. Even though the live stream ended hours earlier, the online momentum continued until the next morning. Posts analyzing the clip were still being shared. Reactions kept coming from both sides. But the energy finally shifted away from conflict and toward understanding. People began acknowledging the complexity behind these moments. They recognized that mention of loved ones or family members in emotionally charged environments can trigger reactions that aren't necessarily deep or dramatic, but simply human. They also began admitting that the internet often reads too much into silence. By the end of the discussion cycle, The situation had evolved into something more reflective than confrontational. The emotional weight that sparked the initial chaos transformed into a broader understanding of boundaries, sensitivity, and the unpredictable nature of public live streams. As the noise settled, most viewers realized that nothing substantial had happened. No accusations, no claims, no statements. Just a split-second moment that triggered memories and emotions for thousands of people watching. And as the internet moved on to its next topic, the story remained a reminder of how quickly online spaces can turn a quiet moment into a cultural discussion. Lil Tim didn't return to clarify anything. OTF supporters didn't escalate further. The situation slowly dissolved into the background as new stories took over the timeline. But the moment lived on through the discussions it sparked. Discussions about perception, trauma, respect, and the complicated dynamics of public narratives. And even as the day ended, the livestream clip continued circulating quietly, no longer chaotic, but remembered as a moment where a name alone was enough to shift the internet into deep emotional conversation. The story concluded not with drama, but with understanding that sometimes silence isn't mystery, it's simply a boundary. And sometimes a live stream isn't a statement. It's just a window where human reactions become public without warning. If you're still here listening, that means you stayed through every shift, every reaction, and every moment that unfolded tonight. And that's exactly why this channel exists. Spillora isn't about pushing narratives or forcing drama. It's about breaking down the moments the internet reacts to, the conversations people rush into, and the energy that builds around unexpected situations. If you want a space where things are analyzed with clarity, calmness, and depth, then this is where you belong. So before you go, make sure you're subscribed, not just to catch the next upload, but to stay part of a community that looks beyond the surface and pays attention to the emotions, the timing, and the reactions that shape these online moments. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown, because the internet moves fast and Spillora follows the story as it unfolds, not days later. Drop your thoughts in the comments, too. What did you notice? How did the moment feel to you? Your perspective matters here, and the conversation doesn't end when this video does. Spillora continues through you. So stay tuned, stay present, and stay connected. The next story is already forming.